Welcome to the 11 Warriors show. Jason Priestess, Chris Lauderback coming to you after a tough 14-3 loss for the Buckeyes in the Cotton Bowl. And on one hand, Chris, there's not much to talk about, but at the same time, there's a lot to talk about from this one. First thoughts.
Dumpster fire on offense, obviously. I was proud of the defense. I thought the defensive line in particular hung in there. I think they eventually just got worn down. But, I think some of the problems we've seen all year kind of manifested in this one. Offensive line, special teams, some different things like that, right? To where I think it's, gonna force Day's hand. I think he probably already was going to do some things. Don't get me wrong, but I would hope. I think a lot of the fan base hopes this pushes for some changes, because third string, whatever, that's certainly a factor. But there's some other things that weren't about the quarterback tonight that continue to be a problem. So a very, very disappointing outing from everywhere except for the defense that hung in there for as long as it could before finally being on the field for so long caught up to it.
Yeah, Bullets played really well, but the issues on the offense, man. The Buckeyes finished this game with 203 yards, pretty much the low point of the Ryan Day era at Ohio State. Devin Brown got the start, of course. Team rallied behind him after Kyle McCord hit the portal and went 4 of 6, 20 yards. Not a great start. Sacked 3 times when he was injured. Left the game, had the ankle banged up. He was on the bike a lot, trying to walk on it. Went to the room, put a high top cleat on to help the ankle, but couldn't return to the game. Lincoln Kienholz to the rescue, but just wasn't ready, man. Seemed like it was over him. And Lincoln, 6 of 17 for 86 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. Missouri brought a lot of heat when he was in the game. They knew what they had. They knew they had a third string quarterback that wasn't really prepared for that moment, and they did what any smart defensive coach will do and dialed it up, brought corner blitzes and brought stunts and got after him. Missouri, I think, finished just 3 sacks, I want to say, but 8 quarterback hurries. They were back there a lot in his face, and he threw some decent balls and some bad balls, and young guy thrust into the moment and probably doing the best he could with limited knowledge of the playbook and maybe not as comfortable as some of the other guys who've been in the system longer, but just not enough. And it's weird because 3 weeks ago, if you told me that Ohio State was going to lose this game, I was like, whatever. It's a Cotton Bowl. It's not a CFP game. Marv's not playing. The starting quarterback's already in the portal. Things like that. But now in the moment, it's like, man, that sucks, right?
Well, the way it happened, I mean, losing a game is one thing. Feeling like it is lopsided and you're going to be lucky if you score a touchdown, which they never did, was a little bit different beast. And like you said, I mean, the offensive line was awful for sure, but they were also, overwhelmed. Missouri was not, even when Brown was in there, I feel like they were not scared of a deep shot. They were bringing pressure against Brown early too. Hey, let's see what this guy's got kind of thing. Make him make us back off, which I think was a smart thing to do. Obviously, they ratcheted up with Lincoln because he was, unprepared, as you mentioned. I don't fault him for that. But yeah, I think it finished with Missouri had 4 sacks and 8 hurries. So that's, that's a lot to overcome. They ended up with 10 tackles for loss. Just swallowed up Ohio State's offensive line and just, backs. I mean, you couldn't even really run. Like, saw a lot of tweets. You got to get over the ball. I'm like, he's trying to stay in and block. Yeah. Like they can't have a tight end run a route. Maybe you could try a tight end screen or something like that. I'm not saying there's nothing you could do, but yeah, those guys had to, they had to stay in and try to block what was a jailbreak all game long. Interesting time. Seems like it was forced on Day, but interesting time to kind of shuffle the offensive line that, had some issues over the course of the year, kind of got better as the season went on. But then you go into this bowl game with a different center and a different right guard that did not look like he deserved to be out there with the starting unit. And that just fed into what was already going to be a problem of just more guys to block than you had blockers, because no one was scared of what either quarterback was going to be able to do with the ball down the field.
Yeah, and that's Matt Jones moving over to center for Carson Hinsman, who'd played there all year. Day said in the postgame that Hinsman had some struggles in practice. He also recently gave, in early December, gave an interview where he's very candid about a few things, and I'm not sure if that played into him not playing or not. But it's wild. I mean, the Blue Jackets played a game Saturday night, and they put 6 goals up and for the longest time on Twitter, the gag was, will the Buckeyes score more than the Blue Jackets? And it turns out that the Blue Jackets doubled them up, which is probably the only time that's ever happened, if we're being honest. Travion ran well. There's some bright spots. X played well. The defense, Jack Sawyer, man, what a coming out game for him.
His ass off. Just stick
3 sacks for Sawyer.
Yeah. I felt like just Travion real quick because that was a smaller piece of the story. But that dude's out there. You don't know if he's going to go pro. He knows he's screwed because, again, nobody is scared of any of these quarterbacks. And it's just, it looked like he was calling the damn offensive line protections for a little bit there. Like he's talking because the quarterback doesn't quite know what he's recognizing. And I thought he ran hard. I thought he stayed positive. I really respect Travion a lot. And you said, 19 for 72, only a 3.8 average. But to do that on a night where, some of those runs were literally, there's 3 guys in the backfield that could have took the handoff. So for him to even get 72, I think was a minor miracle. So I give him a lot of credit for how he hung in there tonight, knowing that it was going to be, an uphill sled the whole game. Yeah,
he did run well. Again, Sawyer, 3 sacks, coming out party for him. Some bright spots. This is the first time since 1990 and 91 which Ohio State's lost their last 2 games of the season in back-to-back years. 2 losses to Michigan in a row. Well, 3 losses to Michigan, but we're talking the last 2 and then the last 2 bowl losses. Pretty tough. I think this is a very, very interesting offseason for Ryan Day. I think if you took a Twitter poll right now, probably 99.9% of the fan base would want Parker Fleming fired, the special teams coordinator, and he's had a rough year.
Done that in October and gotten the same poll result there. What did they have tonight? I think they had 3 penalties on the punt return team. They had 3 fair catches inside the 10-yard line. That's been pretty much a staple of special teams all year.
Timeout on the first punt.
Yeah,
because they weren't lined up.
Missed a 48-yard indoor field goal. Can't put that on Fleming necessarily, but that's enough where just the culmination. Just look at the cumulative of the special teams, and this has been. I'm sure it's going to happen. I feel like Parker Fleming's not going to be the special teams coach next year, but
correct.
I would be stunned if he wasn't. But yeah, I don't know what you say. They weren't good last year.
No.
So
in today's credit, he's been quick to usually move on from coaches that aren't getting it done. He's done on the defensive side of the ball a couple times. So I hope he makes that move because it seems like it's overdue. Maybe Parker's a good dude, but clearly not getting the job done at the level you expect. It's not a good dude
business. You have to be that, but you also have to produce, especially at a position where most teams don't even have a special teams coordinator. True. So if you think you're going to have one, they should probably be competent at what they do. I hate to say it, I'm truly not emotional over the game. We've seen 12 games, 13 games of that nonsense.
Yeah, you pay a guy to be a special teams coach, you better, because most teams don't. You're right.
Right.
You better be an elite special teams unit.
Well, and it's costing you having Laurinaitis being out on the road. Could
There's
probably recruit. Could probably bring some guys in a position where you could use them, quite frankly.
I think you might have some decisions to make about maybe going somewhere else with the quarterback coach. And that's really tough. That's Urban Meyer's, son-in-law, and I'm sure Ryan Day might view Urban as the guy that has given him this opportunity to make $10 million a year, to have this lifestyle, to be in the position he is right now. So that may be a hard one to pull the trigger on.
But
you look at the preparation, of Lincoln Kienholz when he gets into the game. And if you have, a really, really good quarterback, you expect some of these guys to be prepared better, whether they're second string, third string, or whatever, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair one too. And I was going to say, you think Urban would have, that situation stick around? But obviously he would. That was one of Urban's few flaws as a coach, is that he probably would keep someone around like that, or bring him in to begin with because they were in his wedding or whatever else. But yeah, that's I don't know, but I think up to this point I get it, but I think Day should feel that his back is against the wall at this point. Not right in this very moment, but he's got to do groundwork now because his back is against the wall next year. A new AD coming in, you can't lose to Michigan for a 4th straight year. Yeah, even with expanded playoff, a lot has to happen in these next. Got
to go to Oregon next year, man.
Ohio State.
Got a road game in Oregon in September.
The schedule generally, I think, is pretty favorable considering that the Big Ten has expanded in a way. This isn't Rutgers and Maryland coming in. These are real teams coming in, but they are Ohio State would rather have their schedule than Michigan's next year. So, you got to get some guys in quickly. Let's talk about quarterback. I mean, if we're talking about bringing guys in, right? Like we know the smoke that's been out there for a while, it's been gaining a lot of steam on one, with Will Howard, obviously at Kansas State.
Right.
On one hand, you've got, hey, you really didn't get to see much from Brown tonight because of the injury. On the other, he didn't beat out McCord, who no one thinks is national championship caliber, right? In a longer duel. Was hurt this year. A lot of things worked against Devin Brown. Don't
Injury
get me wrong.
prone.
I wish we could have seen more tonight, but the fact is they didn't get a chance to see that. And I don't know. I mean, I said a couple weeks ago, I felt like the 2024 starter was on the roster. I don't feel that way right now. I frankly, I hope that's not the case. What do you think about the QB situation?
Yeah, I think the Will Howard smoke's real. I think that don't be surprised to see him in an Ohio State uniform next year. I think I like Lincoln down the road. I think he showed a little something tonight. He's got some decent awareness back
not
there.
Down on Lincoln,
just overwhelmed.
He's not a 2024 answer.
No, I don't know that Devin is the guy, honestly, and I feel bad saying that because just the injuries and he struggled to throw good balls. And again, like you mentioned, Kyle beat him out if he was elite. So Will Howard's a decent quarterback. He's not, I want to warn fans, he's not Justin Fields. He's not going to come in here and completely light it up, but he's a guy with some experience. He's huge. He's 6'5", 240. He's going to be a big guy in the pocket. Presumably has some better awareness than we've had maybe in the last 12, 13 games back there in terms of reading rush and things like that. But, that's something that you want to keep an eye on as an Ohio State fan is Will Howard, Ohio State. Then let's talk about some of the guys that did anybody maybe change their mind tonight? Because coming into the game, Jack Sawyer was like saying he was probably going to be back next year. But is there any chance that he bolts now?
I don't think so. I thought in the post-game presser, he didn't say I'm coming back or anything like that, but he definitely talked about, hey, losing the last two, wanted to send the seniors out, but it was also, there was more we wanted to do already. This just maybe made that much more true. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Who knows? I mean, I think that I could see like a Mike Hall or someone like that, maybe leaving. But gosh, I got a feeling that just about everybody's going to be back.
Yeah, which again, we talked about that recently. It's a good change. It's refreshing. It hasn't happened much around these parts, so we'll be good to get a lot of guys back. What about Devin? Any chance?
Let's be fair though. I mean, I think part of that is culture, but part of it is these guys. Like the reason you asked the Sawyer question is because of how he played tonight. Like he put a lot of good film out there, right? And he's been building up to that, over the back half of the year. But it's taken him a minute to get to that kind of 5-star potential. I feel like we saw that tonight, and we've seen it some other games down the stretch here. I mean, I'm excited that I think he's still coming back. But these guys, brotherhood, I believe that all that's true. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I think those guys love Day. I think they love the assistants. They love each other. But I think that you go to college to prepare for your career. And I think a lot of these guys coming back, is it that I want to come back and win something at Ohio State? 100%. Yes, absolutely it is. But it's also, hey, there's a draft stock play here. A lot of these guys wanted to play better this year than they did. Right. And they think they can vault up. I mean, name it. Egbuka, JT, Sawyer himself. Burke maybe had the best year out of those guys, I think, or maybe his draft stock is kind of, maybe it is what it is, but
he'll announce on January 10th.
I feel like those guys, I feel like most of those guys are come back, and not just because of brotherhood and wanting to be remembered in Columbus better, but because most of them had years where maybe they feel like they can better them next year.
Yeah, Burke had another good game tonight. He's another guy with a really good game tonight.
I think he had 5 tackles. But he was great in run support. He came up a couple times and made some plays. 6
sacks for the defense. Hard to lose a game when you get 6 sacks, but when the offense has done absolutely nothing on the other side of the ball, I mean, the Buckeyes, you look at what they did on third down, 2 of 15, 203 total yards, 106 passing yards, 8 penalties for 57. 3.6 yards per play, just not what you're used to seeing with this Ohio State team. This one stings, right? It wasn't fun. It was a pretty bad game to watch, if we're being honest. But where does it, I mean, is it the worst bowl loss in recent memory? Where do you kind of put it?
Gosh, man. Yeah.
Because, I mean, for me at least, like the Georgia game was disappointing. It wasn't a bad loss.
Oh, it wasn't a bad loss. I mean, it sucked because of the stakes and the fact that they probably played better than Georgia. And if it wasn't for losing Marvin, lots of ifs and buts. But, that game's nowhere near the echelon of what we're talking about here. This was a stinker. I mean, it was up there with Clemson 31-0. But at least Clemson was, I thought, a pretty good team.
Really good team.
And Ohio State had their starting quarterback in that one.
Yeah, think of that. I mean, that JT
Gosh.
just got rocked and lit up in that one. I mean, Alabama at the end of the 2020 season, that might have been one of the best teams in recent memory that beat them. So
but
not a lot of shame there.
like everything about that year was just jacked up too. You know, a bunch of guys were out. Like that one's not in the conversation with this game either.
No.
Like I felt Ohio State was going to lose to Bama. I probably turned in a winning prediction, but I didn't feel like Ohio State was going to win that game. I felt like Ohio State was going to win a close one, and we both had it 6-point Buckeye win. I think.
Yeah, both taking L's on that one. Marvin, does he change anything if he plays? I mean, obviously he was never going to play, but does he? In Tommy, having those guys in the lineup, a healthy Tommy and Marvin going, does that change?
I don't
much?
think so. I thought, to talk about Tommy first. I love Tommy, but I thought Simon had like 12 tackles. I didn't see Simon do anything that was a problem. I mean, Simon's issue that he's trying to get better at, I think, is like, pass coverage, that type of thing. Cook, he was a mediocre quarterback. I felt like he run the ball okay. Don't get me wrong, but as a passer, I don't think he was scaring anybody. They didn't really have tight end to expose the linebackers and coverage the way Michigan did. So this game was suited for Simon. I thought he played well. He did what Tommy would have done, had 12 tackles, although that Steele played pretty well. This was a game suited for him as well. The linebackers weren't the problem tonight that maybe they've been in some other contests. Marvin, I mean, he's the most valuable player in college football, I think. So having Marvin would have helped, but
at least back
Brown
that box
goes
off a little
down
bit.
at the same time. It's still not going to matter. If he plays and Lincoln is the quarterback for 80% of the game, Ohio State is still screwed.
At least Marvin maybe loosens that box a little bit.
Makes one guy back off a little bit. Yeah,
you have to respect it. So maybe instead of 8, you got 7, right?
But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it would have changed much. That's no disrespect to Marvin. Obviously, it's more of or Lincoln. It's just the fact that you throw a third stringer in there who's not really played and was not prepared. You could have 2 Marvins out there. All you can run's a hitch.
Yeah,
because they could not pass block for longer than a second and a half. Yeah,
that was tough to watch. Very tough to watch. Big offseason for Ryan Day. Seats warm, man. I mean, you've got to be honest. Like, aside from just losing the game, it's one thing, but just how they looked and losing. Is Justin Fry's seat warm? You can make the argument he's dealing with studs guys, but he hasn't recruited well since he's been here.
He hasn't recruited well. They haven't really developed. I mean, they have no depth. We talked about that last week. They have zero depth. Talked about how they can't afford injuries up front. Well, it wasn't an injury. It was whatever it was to Hinsman, playing bad or getting in trouble. Ended up putting a right guard in there who looked like he was overmatched. It was, I think, Simmons. What is Simmons? Simmons has some physical talent. But the mental aspect of the game certainly feels like it's still a problem. I don't know if he had just 1 penalty tonight or 2. I can't remember, but he got cooked a few times. Fryer's been an issue at times. I mean, those guys have their moments. I don't think they are not talented, but that's not an elite unit, and there's virtually no depth behind it. That is not just a stud problem. That's also a Justin Fry problem.
Yeah. Critical offseason for Day. He's going to have to make some hard decisions and maybe make some moves on the staff. We'll have to see what plays out. But, man, it's just a tough one tonight. Bucks losing 14-3 to Missouri in the Cotton Bowl. And, winter drills are coming up. Spring game will be about 5 months away, and hopes renew for next season. But before we get there, man, some tough decisions for Ryan.
Yeah, a lot of off-field stuff, to your point. Yeah, all that stuff you described on-field comes later, but man, there's a lot of off-field stuff with the portal and with the staff that has to get sorted out to lay that groundwork for getting on the field.
Yep, 100%. Well, thanks for joining us, and it was a tough night, and we hats off to everyone that endured that game and sat through it, because for long stretches it was really, really hard to watch, but we're Buckeye fans, and we show up for those games, and thanks for tuning in. We'll be back soon.